Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Kevin Can F Himself, Season 1, Episode 6. It's called The Grand Victorian. Spoilers for the episode as always, and this is a Patreon-sponsored review, so thank you very much to Alison for making the pick. So this was a very kind of classic sitcom story. The sitcom part of it, specifically, obviously. Not as like the finer details, but the core idea of the sitcom episode where the main character has to swap between two locations because they've got two dates at the same time, or because they've got two parties to go to, or because they've got whatever it is. And sometimes it's not even necessarily a lie per se, it's just a simple case of they're trying to juggle two things at the same time, so they're going backwards and forwards between them. And sometimes it's as simple as the kitchen and the living room in some TV shows, but this episode deals with that, with the idea that Kevin's birthday, he always takes Alison for a birthday dinner for himself, or lets her take him, I suppose, maybe the better way of putting it, to a nice restaurant where he wears a tie, but he doesn't want his friend Neil to feel like he's not his favourite, so he also goes to a birthday party right next door at this sort of kids arcade style restaurant. And Neil's been fooled by this for years, whereas Alison, not being an idiot, has always been aware of this and actually kind of appreciates that she gets left there alone to read a book for, some time, because it takes quite a bit of time. He pretends that he's going to get something that he left in the car, never says what it is, of course. He just comes back much later and hijinks will ensue. What was interesting about this episode is that I felt like it didn't start the sitcom stuff until quite a bit into it. It felt like we got a good... I mean, it was maybe not that much more than 5 minutes, right? Maybe 10 at a push. But it felt strange almost just how long we kept with the real world tone, the real world stuff, which primarily was around Alison and Patty going to the Penguin to ask him to kill Kevin. And the tension from that scene is they say they're going to pay him $7,000 upon completion, and they give him the pills up front as kind of a down payment, and he agrees to do it. And Alison's a little bit flustered later on that he kept saying "shut up" to them, but she does feel kind of relaxed afterwards. She compares it with Patty when they're sitting looking for Kevin's birthday present, which is one of those massaging recliners. She says that it's kind of like when she was scared of flying one time, but once she's actually in the plane, she stops feeling stressed about it because it's out of her hands. Now it's just the pilot has to deal with it. It's his responsibility to make sure everything's safe. She's just going to enjoy the flight because if it's going to end well or badly, she can't do anything about it now. So she kind of tries to pretend to herself that that's how she feels about the whole murdering of Kevin. Later on, it turns out that's not the case. She's still obsessing over how he's going to do it. Should she go talk to him? So on, so on. But this is a very classic sort of sitcom setup for the reasons I already said about the whole two locations thing. But it's also a classic sitcom setup in that a lot of characters converge. So for the first time in this episode, we see Sam in the sitcom portion, as well as Jen, because they're both there. We also see Penguin in the sitcom portion, because he ends up... It turns out the restaurant they go for the birthday dinner is where he works as a busboy. So he's around, and that makes Alison nervous, of course, because she thinks, oh, maybe he's going to do it tonight. But in reality, he's just at work, right? This is not the plan. Patty does say that he got away with murdering his stepdad, and that's why he's a good pick to murder Kevin, because he successfully has done this before without getting caught. I'm sure there'll be more to learn there, and how true that may be as time goes on. But at the start of the episode, it does seem like Alison and Patty have kind of formed a friendship. And when Patty gives her a book to read at her sort of solo Kevin birthday dinner, Alison says, oh, are you thinking about me? Are you being sweet and considerate? And she's like, no, I was just lying around. And she puts the shield up and tries not to act like she's actually good friends with Alison at this point. But yeah, they're bonding. They're starting to share these moments, and maybe the positivity of Alison is rubbing off just a little bit. And Patty has her own little adventure this episode. In fact, that's the other sitcom kind of like, whoa, coincidence, is that the thing that Patty ends up going to, this sort of cop party that the detective invited her to, which turns out to be a date with the detective. She didn't realize that when she was going there, of course, necessarily. Maybe she suspected it in some level, but she thought she was going to hear about, or be asked more questions about stuff. And, but she also does get dressed up for it. There's a whole sequence of her like putting on eyelashes and getting frustrated. So I think she's at least, at the very least, she expects it to be a social gathering, even though she maybe still seems to think that she's going to be questioned about crimes and her potential links to what was going on with the drug dealing. But no, the detective very quickly, Detective Ridgway, or Tammy, maybe I'll just call her Tammy, she very quickly refers to it as a date. When Patty's like, hey, what sort of questions do you want to ask? She's like, well, favorite color, food, movie, usual first date type stuff. It's like, oh, that's what this is. She is attracted to Patty, and this was not a suspicion thing. This was a asking out on a date thing. Now, maybe she's playing some sort of, undercover long game that she's actually trying to catch her out in a lie or something. But it seems, at least at face value, this is what it is. And, Patty's a little bit awkward about it. If I was to guess based on this scene, and all the scenes she has with Tammy, I would guess that Patty has never explored the idea of a same-sex relationship before. It seems to be a first-time thing that she's obviously curious about. She's obviously tempted by it, and would maybe help explain why things were never quite clicking with the boyfriend character, whose name I'm never going to remember, who broke up with her last episode. But that felt like a very cold, distant relationship, and maybe one of the reasons why is because Patty's heart really wasn't in it. And the reason for that, amongst maybe some other things, is that she might in fact just be gay, or at the very least, he's not the right one. Maybe she is bisexual or whatever. But it feels like this all fits into this idea of like she fits this role in the sitcom of Kevin, which is to be the sarcastic one-liner machine who's always hanging around, and therefore is expected to have kind of a normal nuclear life aside from that. And she, turns out, doesn't want a normal nuclear life. In fact, she specifically said that to the boyfriend when he wanted to get married. She tried to convince herself she did at one point, but maybe what's actually going to make her happy is Tammy, or if not Tammy, another woman. But it felt like a sort of journey of discovery here, and I think, I'll commend the performances here for this, because like I said there, I clearly got the vibe that this was the first time she's ever even entertained the idea of dating a woman. And her kiss at the end, when she kisses Tammy, when Tammy's asking why she's been acting kind of weird for half the night, which notably happens after Allison comes to talk to her when she finds her downstairs at the same building. Which I think is an interesting moment, because I think you might read that as, oh, she perhaps is thrown off because Allison is worrying about the murder, so that's what she's thinking about now. So she's thinking about the crime she's doing, so maybe she's on edge because of that. I don't think it's any of that. I think it's because Allison kind of realized what was going on and asked, is this a date? I think the idea of someone else noticing and realizing that this might be the start of a gay relationship has made her feel a bit weirder about it, because someone's kind of said it out loud, right? I mean, well, it's no more than what Tammy already said, but it's someone she knows. It's someone in her normal life who has said the same thing and is aware that this is now a thing that might be happening. And now she has to reckon with that it's not just her dealing with her own ideas and feelings, it's the idea that someone else knows that she might be going down this path. And then obviously she kisses Tammy at the end. And, so what I was getting at is that I wanted to commend the performance, because the entire time, everything about her performance, the body language, the way she was reacting to things, said this was a first time thing. And that kiss at the end felt like the first time she'd ever kissed a woman. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe there was like a flirtation back in the day when she was younger, growing up, or something, but certainly I don't think there's been anything since she was like a teenager, based on just the body language and everything that was going on here. So I mean, and that's all done with, I wouldn't say a lot of dialogue. Like, yeah, obviously they talk to each other in their scenes, they're kind of flirting, they're bantering, Patty's being awkward with some of her responses, but I would say most of what was given me this was the performances. So I want to commend that a little bit, because I think that was quite neat. Plus, the idea that this ended up being downstairs at the same place, which was kind of weird in a way. Not that you can't have like a barn, like a sort of basement type setting, because there's obviously that's a thing. But it was just funny because the restaurant, from what we see, because whenever we see Kevin switching locations, it's a very fake alleyway set with the two like back entrances to again fit into the sitcom thing. So it just never gave the vibe that there was a downstairs to where the restaurant was. But sure enough, Allison finds her down there when she goes chasing the penguin to try and talk to him and ends up running into Patty instead. But yeah, I like this episode a lot, if that wasn't clear. Aside from how well they handled the Patty stuff, which it all felt very kind of delightfully awkward and grounded. I think this episode, because it's so focused on this like 2 birthday dinners thing, it's actually a really good wrapper for everything that goes on here, and seeing the various things that come up and the frustrations and just one more of the sitcom tropes that kind of arise of like Kevin challenging this athlete from basketball, maybe? I don't know who he was. His name was Sean Avery, whoever that is. But he plays for the New York team, and that's the rival of the Boston team. So Kevin is very like, you know, confrontational with him, and they basically end up having this challenge to each other to eat this special meal that if you finish it, it's free, because it's like it's like a big giant steak, 2 baked potatoes, and a couple other things. They said it a few times. I'm almost surprised I didn't memorize the entire little list, but he challenges them to this, and he can't back down from the fight, especially when he says something about Boston men being weak or something, or Boston always being losers. But the joke is that when he goes back over to the other party, Neil's got him like a tray of chicken wings and chicken dippers and chicken tenders and just a variety of chicken things, and he's having to try and find a way to not eat this stuff, but then he wants to anyway. So the joke is that he's already filled up on other party food when he's trying to eat this steak, but he's still feeling the challenge, and he even has like a gimmicky moment where another athlete, like the spirit of another athlete from his team, shows up to give him a pep talk. It's bullshit sitcom stuff, but you kind of appreciate it because of how true to other sitcoms a lot of this bullshit is, as you're actually seeing it play out. Like you can almost like, if I actually went and did some research, I could probably give you the equivalent episode of a number of sitcoms if I really wanted to try. Some probably have more than one, honestly, if they ran long enough seasons wise. But it's a very classic sitcom style thing. And it's amusing from like a meta narrative, right? It's not really funny on its own, but it's funny from the meta context. You know, although to be fair, there was one moment where Kevin said, right after he issued the challenge, where he just yelled out, "And by the way, I left something in my car," and he ran out again. I actually got like a genuine chuckle out of that, and I don't even think that was a meta thing. That was just actually kind of funny that he was immediately running away again. But by and large, obviously the Kevin stuff's not funny. It's the like I say, the meta narrative of how it's doing other sitcom things, and how he's dividing time between things. And once again, he ruins something for Allison, because Allison's looking forward to like her wine and a book, so she tries to order a bottle of red wine, and he jumps in and says, "It's my birthday, I'll pick," and he picks the cheapest thing there. She clearly doesn't like it, and then obviously he abandons her to go to the other thing anyway. So he's not even there to drink the cheap wine that he bought, but she is, and it's now ruined part of what she's got going. And to add matters to that, you also get Sam and his wife showing up, which, by the way, they also, like, there was another scene before all this dinner stuff of them having sex again in the back of the diner, and them making little flirtatious comments about seeing each other again later in the week and whatnot. He was suggesting that they see each other again that night. He had a thing to do, but he'd be free after if they wanted to meet up. And it turned out the thing that he was going to do was dinner with a wife, and then he could meet up after that, because he's here at the restaurant. And they come over and say hi. Jen wants to invite her over for a drink, so that's kind of a little bit of an awkward sequence we get. They kind of call back to something they said to each other earlier, where Allison said, "Oh, it's like we're 17 again," when she was excited when they were about to have sex. And then Jen kind of says a similar thing about, "Oh, we came here on our first day. I remember this. It's like being 17 again." And Allison's like, "Oh, I'd hate being 17 again." And the vibe of it changes dramatically. But I will say there was a genuine excitement when they showed up. I thought, wait, are we going to get to see them in the sitcom part? And sure enough, yeah, they came up and talked to and introduced themselves to Kevin. In fact, Sam ends up saving Kevin's life when he starts choking on something, which I think's also ironically quite darkly funny because Allison wants him dead, and here's Sam saving his life in front of her. That's kind of amusing. But yeah, so it's like, okay, it's kind of fun seeing characters who are not typically in this part of the show be in this part of the show. I was actually finding myself quite excited about just getting a little glimpse of that once we realized a lot of the characters were in the same place. So that's pretty cool. That made part of this a good bit of fun. And aside from that, like, I think just, again, this idea of the spinning of the plates and all of this building up to Allison, the idea that Allison's needs to be in control, and that's something that Sam kind of points out, because Sam kind of catches her talking to Penguin, and Penguin sounds a little aggressive. I can't remember exactly what he said at that moment, but Sam's like, hey, we got a problem here, and he steps in to defend her, and she has to talk him down, but it becomes this thing where it's like, oh, we can only do stuff when you say, because you have to be in control, you're very... And which is funny, because obviously with Kevin, she has no control, right? It's like almost like the poison, like, against who she inherently is. It's kind of funny to think about the idea that with everyone else, she's actually too in control, or at least tries to be too in control. But the episode does end with her going to see Penguin and being like, look, if you want Paige, you'll do this my way. I'm not just going to wait blindly until you randomly do it at some point. You will keep me up to speed on what the plan is, and you will tell me, and if I don't like how you're going to do it, you don't do it that way. It's something to that effect. And he's like, fine. So it's not even like he makes much of an argument. He's just like, fine. And that's kind of how the episode ends. That and the patty kiss. Those are kind of the two cliffhangers of everything. But I would also say, actually, that probably my favorite cut between the two versions of the world is in this episode. There's a moment, I think it's the first time Kevin leaves the restaurant to go to the kids' place next door, is he jumps up and he goes over to the back exit, and he does this kind of like over the top kind of comical look over his shoulder, like he's being sneaky. And as soon as he closes the door, it cuts to a fresh shot of Allison. And I think because the restaurant is such a different set to the house, it really stuck out to me when it cut to that shot looking dead on at her, and the lighting had completely changed. It's not necessarily anything really different to what we've done since episode 1. It just was accentuated quite a bit here because of the location change and just like everyone else around them, and all, because usually it's just her, maybe her and Patty a push when we cut from like the sitcom to the real world. But here it was like, no, the waitress is there, all these people, all these extras in the background all just changed to the new lighting, like, all these different people, all of a sudden very, very different vibes. And I think it really kind of sold this idea of him, like, as strange as this sound, it made him leaving the scene feel like an event, like a big deal. So yeah, and the neat part of that is, of course, we never see the kids' party place with the tokens because they want to get this big foam hat as the prize. We never see that in the real world because we only ever see it when Kevin's there. So that's always brightly lit. It's always sitcom looking, and it kind of makes sense. It's almost like if this was like not doing the gimmick, right? And I don't mean that negatively or disparagingly. I just mean if we weren't doing the sitcom gimmick, you could almost like just say, oh, imagine where he'd be sneaking off to do something behind his wife's back. If it wasn't doing this sitcom premise, like what's this a stand-in for the bad husband running away? I mean, having an affair, maybe, but honestly, it could be a number of bad things that crime, whatever. I don't know. Doesn't matter. The point I'm getting at here is just this idea of like, this is the so sanitized version because literally he's running away to do this innocent thing, relative, all in the line. This super innocent idea of just trying to win a foam hat by playing silly games at a child's restaurant. But it's a stand-in for other things. It's a stand-in for darker things, for more the phrase my brain's going to is soul-crushing things, but that's not quite what I mean. But stuff that's more damaging, right, to those around him, specifically to his wife. So yeah, no, it's it's fun. And like I said, like this idea of like, well, we see them in the sitcom world when Allison runs into Sam and his wife. It's also that idea of like they even kind of tease it a little bit because they start asking about Kevin because she's like, "Oh, I'm here with my husband," and she's like, "Oh, I'd love to meet him." It's like, "Oh yeah, he's a barrel of laughs." Like it's like almost actually does do a good job of building up to this idea of what's it going to be like when they all get together. And interestingly, she introduces Sam as her new boss. I don't know if Kevin's aware that they knew each other when they were younger, if that's something that he would already know. Well, let's be honest, he'd probably forget it. At least the way it's presented in the sitcom stuff, he would forget it. Maybe he would like secretly know and he'd be resenting it, and like he'll start, conniving and manipulating and doing all the things that he typically does. But yeah, no, I thought this episode was great. It was a very focused episode, which I really liked. After the last couple, which was a lot more traveling, characters were split up, and it was doing kind of like a number of separate things. I really liked how this one kind of converged everything into one thing. Now, I didn't really need it to mix the Patty stuff with the detective into the same location necessarily, but I do think that Allison calling it out and saying, "Hey, is this a date?" and then kind of Patty's demeanor changing after that did add a lot to Patty's story. So I think it does work in that case. But everything else with like the sitcom antics of the two locations and the flip in between, but then every other character, pretty much every character we know in this show, somehow showing up to this. Sam and his wife, the penguin who's going to kill Kevin, seemingly. Like, all these major characters all showing up. If the mechanic showed up from the first couple of episodes, it would have been like a full set, pretty much. So, yeah, it's funny because I definitely noticed the actor who played Penguin showing up in the store back in episode 1, and I'm like, well, he's probably going to be a bigger deal because that feels like an extra practically in that scene. And sure enough, fast forward a few episodes between the last one and this one, and he's like this prominent, intimidating figure in the series. But yeah, I think this is the type of episode that I can really sink my teeth into in a number of ways, and it maybe not even so much in like the like I don't know if I have as much to say in terms of analysis for it, admittedly, right? I think the last couple episodes, especially with that escape room stuff, it was like singing to me, like all the things it was representing about a relationship and like the woman not being able to get out of it, even if she really tries to, because he's got her trapped and stuff like that. I mean, here obviously there's some broad things. There's this idea of him abandoning her, right? That's something as simple as that, but it's not like screaming the perfect thing out to me. But it is, I guess it is interesting that when he abandons her at that restaurant, that's where she's running into her current, lover and all the messy life that she's got that he's completely oblivious to. If he is indeed oblivious to it. That's the thing about this, is that we're getting into this idea that Kevin kinda does know about stuff and manipulates things that gets in the way of everything. But because we're doing it through the sitcom lens, he's kind of like doing it almost like he's almost like stumbling into like a buffoon and doing it like a wrecking ball, rather than because he's being cold and calculated and manipulating in like a very intentional way. But I think the sitcom stuff is sort of standing in as a a screen for that, like for a. So it's I think it's interesting comparing like what the real version of Kevin is actually doing versus the sitcom version that we're actually seeing in the show. So yeah, that is something that's kind of always weighing on my mind as I'm watching and thinking about how it's intersecting with Allison's story. But yeah, but this was a very smooth watch. It went in very quick, and it was hard not to get just wrapped up in the character storylines. I mean, the actual murder like planning or like murder stuff is like kind of was probably the least exciting part of the episode. It was more the antics of everything converging. Because we've already had Allison run into Sam's wife a couple times now in one way or another. So now having Kevin be around for that is like an escalation of that. It feels like things are building. And we've only got 2 episodes left of the season, so it feels like it should be building. And I would assume that a murder attempt is going to happen in the finale. Now, there's a season 2. I'm pretty sure that Kevin will probably still be around for Kevin Can F Himself. It just feels like he will be around. So I'm curious to see how that fails, or if maybe something again, intervenes or things change, or I know Patty has a change of hearts, maybe. Who's to say? But good episode. I like this one quite a bit, and found myself kind of enjoying the hijinks of it more than I typically do the sitcom stuff, and not so much because of Kevin himself, more just because one, the meta narrative works really nicely into the kind of the musical chairs of like people running into each other and not running into each other until it's the right time, and when will they converge. That's just inherently fun. But also, this is just a sitcom trope I actually quite like. I guess like the character having to run between two locations is usually a fun episode of a sitcom, so you can get something out of that as well. But yeah, that is my thoughts on this episode of Kevin Can F Himself. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps out a bunch if you do. And you can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep all the stuff coming, both here and over at MailFuzz Movies, where all the movie podcasts live. So go have a look at those if you haven't. But that is me, so thank you once again. I'll see you guys next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?